Hello and welcome to the Unhallowed Essence Speed Farming Guide. My name is True Feeling. I'll be showing you guys around the build and the basics on how to play it. I'll be doing this in one take, so forgive any hesitation or mistakes I have. Without any further ado, let me get into the game. So I'm going to explain my gear choices a little bit here for you first before I get into the Rift. Now these aren't the ideal stats in the actual guide itself on DiabloFans. I go in a little more in depth as far as the ideal, what you absolutely need. First, let me get the items out of the stash because I forgot to equip them. Alrighty, so I actually have separate gear setups for this build and my regular Greater Rift pushing build. I recommend you guys get that so you're not reforging away the items that you need, or the itemization rather. So, I guess without further ado, I'm going to show my full breakdown of character stats first. I have a 20% fire damage increase. Ideally, that would be higher. Hopefully, I would get some for my amulet, but unfortunately, I haven't been lucky enough to get a decent Hellfire amulet. 124% multi-shot damage increase. It's a lot higher than a lot of people are running. My multi-shot damage is not actually max on my quiver. However, I do get multi-shot from my boots and my helmet. So that is where all that is coming from. As far as cooldown reduction, I have 38.67%. I could afford to lose about 8% of that. It does diminishing return, so the reality is I will be hovering around 33% with the ideal gear setup. On top of that, I do have 84 discipline, which is the point in which we can get to without diminishing returns. With this particular build, I should have a discipline cost reduction a little more than that. Let me toss on my cinder coat here. And that's going to bring me to, well, 50.5% still, but with Vault as Trail of Cinders, that's going to be cut down quite a bit because of the resource cost reduction from Cinder Coat. So, as far as gear choices here, we're going to be looking for critical hit chance and multi-shot damage on our helmet. For cooldown reduction, and hopefully instead of resist all elements, you'll get an area damage roll on your shoulders. I was not lucky enough to get that. For your gloves, you can be looking for dexterity, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and either attack speed or area damage. Area damage is preferable because attack speed, while it's great, is not going to help you clear any faster because you're going to be one-shotting anyway. Hopefully you're shooting off one multi-shot and then moving on. Additionally, I'm going to be running the Witching Hour. You don't need to use this. You can use the Hunter's Wrath, but the Witching Hour is hands down the best belt for Demon Hunters to be running. You're going to want critical hit damage, attack speed. Those are pretty standard on this belt, and dex and fit. As far as your chest, dex, fit, resist all. There's not a whole lot you can get from there stat-wise, but you do need to make sure that you have maximum discipline on your chest. Mine is rolled 12. It doesn't need to be rolled 12. However, you do need to get 34 discipline from these three items: your quiver, your bow, and your chest. So keep that in mind, that 34 is the magic number. If you have more than that and you've naturally rolled it, not a big deal, but you're not getting as much out of it. So I do use the Nemesis bracers for this build. It's going to make my clears a lot quicker. It's going to spawn those mobs. Ideally, I'd have vitality instead of armor on these, but it doesn't really matter. It's a survivability stat. It's wasted anyway. Other than that, I'm running Focus and Restraint. My Restraint isn't ideal right now. I would hope to have critical hit chance and area damage instead of dexterity on my Focus. However, again, not the luckiest guy in the world with rolls. My Unholy Plates are pretty standard. Boots are the same. Ideally, I'd have movement speed instead of resist all, simply because I don't need it. As far as my quiver goes, I did drop vitality off of my quiver. That is what you saw me swap out. In this quiver, I am using area damage, and I have a maximum cooldown roll. You'll also notice I have plus 11 discipline. It's not a big deal. Again, I'm exactly at 84, to the point where it isn't DRing too hard or diminishing returning, so it's not a big deal. Additionally, on my bow, I prefer to have increased attack speed or area damage on this. However, the vitality is too good for me to pass up for my Greater Rift pushing. This is not a great bow at all. However, it is what I have to work with. So, if you're clearing and you're finding this going way too easy, then maybe push up your Greater Rift level as you get more gear, because I don't have the greatest. So other than that, I'm going to go over the basic playstyle before we get in here. Oh, before that, let me go over my legendary gems. I'm using Bane of the Trapped. This is going to be up pretty much all the time. I'm using Bane of the Powerful, again, pretty much up all the time, in Zay's Stone of Vengeance. A lot of my kills are going to be coming from off screen, so Zay's Stone of Vengeance is great for that. Now, as far as skills, I'm using the standard skill setup: Evasive Fire with Focus, Multi-Shot with Arsenal, Preparation with Invigoration, which is mandatory. Vault, I do use the Trail of Cinders rune because the Cinder Code is going to affect that and make it cost less. So that is actually 30% is better than 50% on your second. That averages to obviously 25%, whereas 30% is higher. Vengeance with Seethe for Hatred Generation and Wolf Companion. Technically, you could go bat if you're finding yourself running out of Hatred, but you're losing a lot of damage. With 30% cooldown reduction, 38% I guess, I do have Wolf Companion up a very good portion of the time. So it's great for Rift Guardians too. As far as passive skills, I'm running Ambush, Ballistics, Call of the Week, and Thrill of the Hunt. Those are pretty standard. Ambush is great. Steady Aim is technically better if the mobs are going to live longer, but Ambush is great because in this Greater Rift farming, you're going to one-shot everything anyway, so it doesn't matter. You'll notice on my Hellfire Amulet, I am taking Awareness. That's going to keep me alive. If I proc Awareness, I'm just going to kind of move back and run away. So without further ado, I'm going to hop into a Nephilim Rift. I have no idea what I'm about to roll. I have no idea if it's going to be good, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how I'm going to play. I'll try to narrate over it the best I can. Alright, and we're back. Now that I can select a Greater Rift instead of a Nephilim Rift, I believe this will go a little bit better. I'm just going to cover what I said before. The main strategy of this is going to be to kill everything before it gets to you. A lot of your kills are going to be coming from off screen. As you can tell there, I managed to mangle 2 elite mobs pretty quickly. So I have no idea what the density is going to be in this. I'm just kind of narrating over it, showing you kind of a real world rift here. This isn't any sort of like magical speed run or anything, but this is a typical rift for me. I don't need to focus too much on these. I tend to try to avoid builds where I'm going to need to pay attention to run fast. So 99 times out of 100, I'm going to be doing something else while I'm doing this, whether it's like watching Netflix or watching a stream. This build isn't very thought intensive. You just got to kind of make sure you're away from everything. Those explodey guys, the grotesques, they can pose a problem sometimes. They're kind of a pain in the butt. They don't die in one multi-shot, and they spawn more mobs. So just keep that in mind, that you don't roll into them kind of mindlessly, and you'll be golden. So here's where those Nemesis bracers really shine. I'm going to try to pace myself and keep myself away from these mobs here. Shielding also posing a problem here, but nothing we can't handle. The key to this build is going to be letting Arsenal do a lot of the work for you. Your missiles do an extreme amount of damage with the plus fire and all the multipliers, so let them. You don't always need to kill the closest mob to you. Your missiles are going to do that for you, so there's no reason to worry about it. Just fire your multi-shot into the biggest group of mob you can find, and go to town. So, about done here. This has proven to be one of my faster rifts. Density is great here. So, as you can tell, I'm just kind of vaulting around, keeping max discipline, not really a priority, simply because I don't need the extra damage, and I'm going to need the discipline for the Rift Guardian. However, it is important to maintain constant awareness of your discipline, otherwise it's going to get away from you, you're going to be tumbling around too much, and you're just going to run out and do no damage. It kind of sucks. Another thing to keep in mind here is to keep your focus up pretty much all the time. That's going to be a good, like 50% of your damage comes from keeping that focus up, you know. So it's very important that you prioritize that. I managed to finish this in 2 minutes and some odd seconds. It'll show you when I close the rift. Let me level up my keystones here. Here are my gems. And I'm sorry about you hearing the clicking in the background. Unfortunately, I don't have a studio set up. This is just quickly put together to show you what this build is capable of. So the final time for that rift was 2 minutes and 15 seconds, which is actually one of the fastest rifts I've done so far. So obviously this, with the proper gear, the proper setup, this is capable of a whole lot more. It's great for leveling alts, as you can see, or I'm sorry, gearing alts. As you can see, I got a healthy amount of blood shards from that, and it didn't take any effort at all. I was able to narrate over it comfortably the entire time. So This is just an insight into the Unhallowed Essence glass cannon build, and hopefully you guys can find some weaknesses with the build and improve it, and happy hunting.